This same principle of using CSS wherever we can will also cascade to other visual qualities of the page. So background colors, borders, anything we can do in CSS will ultimately afford us greater flexibility later on. But all that said, occasionally you will need to use an image instead of CSS. And in the beginning, you may find yourself using images more often than you will later on once you get a grip over what you can and can't do with CSS. With front-end development, as well as any other technical skill, there tends to be two schools of thought in terms of how to implement something. The first school of thought is the practical or sensible school, where the main goal is completing the project, whatever it is that you're trying to do. And so if sometimes you need to cut corners, that's okay, because it helps you reach the ultimate goal, which is completing your task. The benefit to this approach is that you may get things done faster initially, and you'll find yourself less bogged down with the nuances of how to implement specific pieces of functionality. The other school of thought is the clean school of thought, and the mental model that this school of thought has is really centered around doing things right the first time. So that means that you spend more time digging deep into the small details of what you're doing so that you figure out the very best way to do it now so that you don't have to come back to it later and fix it. People who fall into this second school of thought more often tend to be along the nerd spectrum because they'll often forego practicality for preciseness. But chances are that you, as you begin this process of learning front-end development, will go between these schools of thought. You'll start out with the mindset that you should do it right so you don't have to worry about it later. And then at some point, you'll run out of time, and you'll begin to work with what you already know in order to get something done. So for example, we just talked about how it makes more sense to use text instead of images inside of your HTML, at least whenever you have some text in the image. But if a deadline is approaching and you're really not sure how to implement what you see in CSS, you may find yourself using an image. And I just want to take this opportunity to give you permission to do that. In the future, if you end up working at a digital agency as a front-end developer, you'll probably find yourself called out when you try to do things like use an image for text. But at that point, you'll be on a whole different level of experience, and you'll be making other compromises that other people in your agency don't understand. Ultimately, though, you have to balance the two sides. On the one side, needing to get something done in a certain amount of time, and on the other side, wanting to do it right so you don't incur what's called technical debt and have to come back later and redo what you had already done. So as we go through the videos in this series, I'll be doing my best to present the nerdly way, the way that incurs the least technical debt over time. But keep in mind that everybody who makes a living doing front-end development is going to make compromises on a regular basis. And it helps to think about that as part of your job instead of some kind of failure.